And now that we have the basics of local storage and our JSON methods down, we're going to actually integrate this into the two applications so we save our data as the user adds it. To kick things off with the Notes app, let's go ahead and delete all of the existing boilerplate data. And we're also going to remove all of the examples from the previous video. We're going to build things up from scratch. And the first thing we want to do right here is check for existing saved data. So we want to see if there's already saved data notes inside of local storage. If there are, we want to make sure to use them by updating the notes array. If there are none, then we'll just stick with an empty notes array, waiting for the user to actually add some data in. So right here, we're going to need to do a couple of things. First up, I'm going to make a new const. I'm going to call this const notes JSON, and I am going to get its value from right here, LocalStorage.getItem. Now we haven't picked a key yet to store this data under. I'm just going to use the key notes. So this is going to read the data. Now we're going to get null back if there is no data. We're going to get back the data if it actually exists. So we can set up an if statement just to check what we got. If right here, notes JSON is not equal to null, then we're good to go. And we're going to go ahead and parse that JSON and store the resulting array on notes. Now that means that notes is no longer going to be a const. We're actually going to end up potentially changing it. So I'm going to have to switch that over to let. Inside of here, let's go ahead and perform that operation. I'm going to set notes equal to, I'm going to use JSON.parse. This is going to parse that data. What data? The notes JSON data. Now, if there is no data stored, this code's never going to run, meaning that notes will never get updated and it'll just stay an empty array. We can actually go ahead and save our application in its current state. I save things, I check over inside of the console, and there are no real errors. So what happened here is that we tried to fetch the data. We have never set that key before, so this code never actually ran. And we can prove that over inside of the storage tab. If we want to further debug things, we can see we just have user from the last example. I'm actually going to go ahead and delete all of the data, all of that data that we were playing around with before. Now what we want to do is fill out the second half of this. So here we are checking for existing data. What we also want to do is save the data to local storage, and we want to do that when it changes. When exactly does the data change? Well, the only time we ever modify the notes array is right down here in create note. We actually don't modify it yet. We're going to go ahead and tweak it to modify it, re-render the list, and also save the changes. So right here, we're going to use exactly what we used over in the to-do app. I am going to use notes.push to add a brand new object on. And for the notes app, we're going to have the title start off as an empty string, and the same with the body. We'll have a separate page where a user can actually fill out those values, but by default, both of them are going to end up being empty strings. Now this is step one. We want to push the new item on to the notes array. The next thing that we're going to do is save the new notes array to local storage. And we can do that with a single line. Local storage dot. How do we save data? We use set item. Now we already have a key picked out. That's the first argument. The key is going to be notes. The second argument is going to be our data. In this case, we will use JSON.stringify. And what do we pass into JSON.stringify? The object that we want to convert to a string. In this case, it's notes. So JSON.stringify is going to work with our array data as well. Now we move on to the last step, something you already did for the to-do app. We just re-render things. So I'm going to call render notes, passing in those two arguments, passing in the latest notes array and the filters, which have actually gone unchanged in this particular instance. Remember that we currently don't have a way to set a note title or body, meaning the resulting output isn't going to show much of anything. To fix this, all I'm going to do is make a tweak to our for each loop right here. This is where we pick what text we're going to show. we show the note title, but what if the note title doesn't exist? It would be nice to show some sort of generic message like unnamed note. Let's go ahead and do just that, and then we'll actually test our work. If right here, we're going to look at note.title. If its length is equal to 0, then we know we have an empty note. So right here, I'm actually going to use greater than 0 for a note that does have a title. In here, we're going to have the exact same code we had below. If the note title length is indeed greater than 0, we're going to use that as the thing we display. Otherwise, else, we are going to go ahead and do something else. In this case, we're going to set note element.textContent equal to a generic string, something like unnamed note. Now notice we're not actually updating the note object's title property, we're just displaying something in place of the non-existent title. Now that we have this in place, we can actually test our work. When I save things, what's going to happen? It's going to try to read data from local storage. It's not going to find any, so it's not going to make any changes to notes. Notes is an empty array. When I click this button, we can see unnamed note shows up for the one new note we have added. Now it's showing up because we called render notes down below, and that means it should have also saved the data. If I refresh the page, what do we get? We get a single instance of unnamed note. Now I could add 2 more into the mix. I could refresh the page again, and what do I get? I get all 3 showing up. So we are successfully saving our data and reloading it when the user comes back. And we were able to do that with 1 line down below and just a handful of lines up above. Now it's your turn to do the exact same thing for the to-do application. Let's go ahead and move over to the to-do app, and I'll outline exactly what I'd like you to do. Up above, I'm going to paste some comments I've previously written. There are 3 steps for this one. The first one is to delete the dummy data. We're not actually going to start off with any items in the to-dos array. The second one is to read and parse the data when the app starts up. So you want to look in local storage, see if there's any existing data in there. If there is, you're going to parse it and use it, just like we did for the Notes app. Step 3, down below, you are going to stringify and write the data when new data is added. So if we add something to the to-dos array, we want to make sure to stringify that array and save it in local storage. So if someone refreshes it, they can actually access the data. Take some time to knock all 3 of these out. The end result is that when you go ahead and add items over here, and refresh the page, those items should not go away like they currently are. They should stay showing up. All right, go off, knock that one out, test your work. When you're done, come back and click play. All right, how'd that one go? Let's kick things off by deleting the dummy data, easiest part of the challenge. The next thing we're going to do is populate the correct to-dos if any were actually saved. If not, the empty array is fine. I am going to switch this over to let, and down below, we're going to actually read and parse the data. So first up, I can create a const to-dos JSON, for example, and I will read from LocalStorage.getItem, and you could have picked whatever key you liked. I'm going to go with to-dos, makes a whole lot of sense to me. The next thing to do was to see if any data was in there. If, right here, we're going to check if to-dos JSON is not equal to null. If it's not equal to null, there is data, which means we are going to use it and parse it. I'm going to set to-dos equal to. Here we use JSON.parse to take our string and get back an array. The string data lives under the to-dos JSON variable. So that completes step 2. Now at this point in time, we can save the application and we can see that we have no items showing up. If I add an item and refresh it, we still lose it. We are correctly reading from local storage, we're just not writing to it, which means that this never returns anything. To fix that, all we need to do is modify local storage whenever we change the to-dos array. We only change it right here for the moment, so let's go ahead and add a line in. I'm going to add that line right here. We will use LocalStorage.setItem to set the item we had called to-dos. The data, we are going to need to stringify that array. So JSON dot stringify, passing in the data That is the to-dos array. And there we have it. That should complete the challenge. We can go ahead and actually test our work. Over here, I'm going to add thing 1 and thing 2. I'm going to refresh the page. And what do we get? We get thing 1 and thing 2 still showing up. If I switch over to the storage tab and look at the local storage data for this page, I can see right inside of there, we have our JSON data. We have our array of objects. So we now have saved data. We were able to knock this out using local storage, bringing us one step closer to a real world application where people can actually enter data and expect it to be there when they come back. For the moment, I am going to delete some challenge comments from a previous video, and up above, I'll delete these as well. That is it for this video. We got local storage all set up. We're going to continue on in the next video. What I want to start talking about is not necessarily new features or new things we can do with JavaScript, but I want to take just a little bit of time to talk about how we can better organize the things we already have. At this point, our applications aren't that long. We have 60 lines for the to-do app and another 52 for the notes app, but there is a lot of code inside of here, and things could be better structured and organized by being broken up into multiple files. We're going to talk all about that one in the next video, so stay tuned and I'll see you then.